Ever imagined a queen, the very symbol of a nation, dodging bullets and assassination attempts not once, not twice, but 7 times? This is the story of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, known as the Mother of Europe, ruled the United Kingdom for over 60 years. But behind the grandeur of her reign lies a series of harrowing assassination attempts, each revealing a facet of her extraordinary resilience and the society she lived in. If you find this video interesting, please support us by hitting the like button. Now, let's get started. Queen Victoria faced her first assassination attempt in 1840, just 3 years into her reign. On a sunny day in June, the first assassin, Edward Oxford, showed up at Buckingham Palace in London with 2 guns. He blended in with the crowd, waiting for the moment the Queen and her husband, Albert, would emerge from the palace gates in their carriage. The Queen's carriage emerged. To their surprise, the carriage was an open-top carriage, which was unusual for a monarch's vehicle. An open-top carriage is designed with the top of the car body open, exposing the rider. Oxford, armed with a gun, approached the Queen's carriage and fired the first shot. The incident is recorded in Victoria's own diary in this way: "The loud noise of the pistol deafened me, and soon the carriage stopped. My husband was sitting on my right at the time. We looked around and saw a small man standing there with his arms crossed and a pistol in each hand." The scene, as described in Victoria's diary, paints a chilling picture. At this point, the perpetrator has not yet been apprehended, and for the Queen and Albert, it is clearly a life-threatening situation. The Queen and her husband, Albert, appeared fearless, even though they narrowly escaped the assassination attempt. What a brave couple! On the other hand, Edward Oxford, the assailant, was said to have exclaimed, "Women should never rule England," as he was being subdued. He was subsequently committed to a mental hospital by the court. What happened to Victoria, on the other hand? Who was attacked? She showed no fear and behaved with dignity. This was greatly admired by the British public. 2 years later, in 1842, a second assassin appeared on the scene: 20-year-old John Francis, a former actor and cabinetmaker with a record of theft. Fortunately, this time the shot missed and Francis escaped. And following the attack that day, Robert Peel, then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, urged the Queen to remain indoors until the perpetrators were caught. This was a natural decision, since there was a danger that the escaped assassins would attack the Queen again. However, the daredevil and brave Queen Victoria refused the suggestion. The Queen herself decides that she must dare to leave the palace in order to lure out the assassins and solve the case. The day after the first attack, on May 30th, she left again in a carriage. This time, too, the Queen was riding in an unprotected, open-top carriage. On this day, however, a large number of undercover police officers were deployed among the crowd. Even so, it seemed like a risky gamble, given that the assassin had a gun. However, the Queen was apparently a lucky woman. The case was solved early, just as she had planned. Francis, the assassin, appeared near the carriage and opened fire, but fortunately, neither the Queen nor Albert were injured by the bullets. Francis was then quickly subdued by the police officers. Although she was lucky to be safe in the end, Victoria's bold actions to lure the culprits showcased her fearless nature. On July 3, 1842, only 5 weeks after Francis's assassination attempt, a third assassin appeared, this time John William Bean, who had a very specific motive for attacking the Queen. Bean was 17 years old at the time, but was born short, with a 10-degree spinal deformity, a condition known as hunchback, which causes the body to stoop forward. Because of his physical characteristics, he was bullied by his siblings, had difficulty finding work, and faced other social difficulties. He came to believe, if I try to kill the Queen, I will either die or end up in a mental hospital. Either way, it would be better than now. Thus, Bean decided to carry out his plan to assassinate the Queen. On the day of the crime, Bean also ambushed the Queen outside Buckingham Palace. He fired shots at the Queen, who appeared in her open-top carriage as usual. However, the Queen was unharmed. Bean's gun contained tobacco and scraps of paper, not bullets. Bean, who was eventually captured, further testified that he fired at the ground, not at the Queen. After all, Bean's goal was not to kill the Queen. His motive was simple: he wanted to make a better life for himself by getting arrested. So, did Bean's wish come true? Unfortunately, he was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 18 months in prison without ever being sent to the asylum of his choice. It was not until 1849, 7 years after Bean's case, that a fourth assassin appeared. The new assassin's name was William Hamilton. His motive was apparently political. Then, in 1850, the year after Hamilton's case, a fifth assassin appeared. Robert Pate, a former army soldier, was 50 years old at the time, making him the only assassin to actually wound the Queen. The scene was again on the main street outside the palace. But this time he did not carry a gun as previous assassins had done. Pate approached the Queen in her carriage with an iron cane in his hand, and struck her directly in the face. The blow left the Queen with a black bruise around her eye, and a scar that would not disappear for years. 21 years have now passed since the Pate incident, in which the Queen was wounded. Victoria was 52 at the time, having lost her beloved husband, Albert, 10 years earlier. The sixth assassin was Arthur O'Connor, a 17-year-old boy born in London. He described himself as Irish and seemed to have such a delusion that he would become a hero of his country by killing the Queen of England, who ruled Ireland. At the time, Ireland was suffering under British rule, and many people of Irish descent were antagonistic toward the British government. However, he eventually changed his mind and came up with the idea of liberating Ireland by threatening the Queen, not killing her. With such determination, Arthur appeared at Buckingham Palace on February 29, 1872. He asked a policeman what time the Queen would return from her outing, and waited at the head of the crowd gathered by the gate. Then the carriage with the Queen arrived. As usual, it is an open-top carriage. Arthur had a clear shot at the Queen, but thanks to the swift intervention of those around her, no bullets were fired. This time, the bodyguard John Brown, who had been accompanying the Queen since Albert's death, intervened before the bullet could be fired. Brown was the first to knock the gun out of Arthur's hand, seizing him and knocking him to the ground to prevent him from committing the crime. For this feat, John Brown was awarded a gold medal and a cash prize. In light of the previous assassination attempts, the Queen's vulnerability was evident. However, by the sixth attempt, it seems a dependable protective presence finally emerged. Nevertheless, the captured Arthur claimed that he did not intend to kill her, but only wanted to scare the Queen. It also seems that this testimony was accepted, as it turned out that the gun he actually had did not work. Therefore, he said, Arthur's sentence was 1 year in prison and 20 lashes with a birch cane. This was a fairly light sentence compared to other assassins. Another 10 years later, in 1888, when Queen Victoria was 62 years old, the final assassination finally occurred on March 2. Roderick McLean, the seventh assassin, fired at the Queen while she was on a train. Fortunately, this last bullet also did not hit the Queen. McLean was quickly subdued by 2 witnesses who were nearby, and the final assassination attempt ended with the Queen unharmed. The last assassin, Roderick McLean, is said to have belonged to a radical faction that wanted Irish independence. There is a theory that Ireland's desire for independence was strongly opposed to the British Crown at the time, and this was one of the reasons why McLean hated the Queen. Similarly, Arthur O'Connor was driven by political motives tied to Ireland. Given that Queen Victoria symbolized England, it's plausible that her life was continually under threat. Thus, Queen Victoria finally survived the attacks of 7 assassins. And looking back on it all, one thing seems surprising. 3 of the 7 assassins were exiled and imprisoned for 7 years, subjected to hard labor. While this is not a light sentence, one might wonder if it was truly sufficient. One assassin received an 18-month jail sentence, while another was subjected to a flogging and a year's imprisonment. The remaining 2 were sent to a mental hospital instead of prison for insanity. In some cases, the Queen herself commuted the death sentences, indicating that, in fact, the punishments were diverse. However, when the last assassin was acquitted, The Queen expressed her dissatisfaction and urged her cabinet to enact stricter laws. Queen Victoria passed away on January 22, 1901, at the age of 81. It wasn't an assassin's bullet that claimed her life, but a cerebral hemorrhage. Queen Victoria reigned as the Queen of the British Empire, surviving 7 assassination attempts during her turbulent reign. Looking back through history, few have lived as intense and eventful. 81 years as Queen Victoria. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.